Okay, welcome to task 5 where we look at shot reverse shot techniques. So the first initial thing is to set two people up in the same shot. What you can do is have them looking at each other with each other in the left and right side, which is fine. That's just a standard setup. But what else you can do when you look at, I really recommend looking at films and television and see how they set two people up in the same situation. So what you can do is you can have one person doing something and another person entering the scene, or you can have one person sitting down in the front and one person standing up in the back, or you can have one person close, their heads here, and one person very far away over here. It depends. A good simple way of doing it is to have one person in the scene and the other person entering the scene. The simplest way of doing it is like you have already here, two people in the scene. So let's go and see how we go. Now what I'm looking for is, or what works really well is what I'm looking for is that you've met the brief. There's reasons why there are certain stipulations in the brief. So let's go through and talk about that.
What do you think?
Okay, so first, nice natural reactions from him. That works really well. A little bit loud, a little bit soft, so we'll turn it up, but that's great. It's better to have it quieter rather than louder. I can easily turn it up, but if it's too loud, then it does distort the sound. Even if I turn it down, if the sound is too loud in your export, it is already distorted. So negative 12 decibels for audio, negative 20 for dialogue, etc. Negative 20 decibels for music. You can lift the music up a little tiny bit, but don't have your music at negative 12 decibels on your audio meter. Otherwise, the music will sound way loud. There's too many frequencies. It'll fill them all up. And we've all sat there watching television and having the dialogue too soft and the music too loud. Now that's professionally mixed. So it happens to the best of us. But just generally, as a rule of thumb, keep your music quiet. It will come through anyway, and your dialogue a lot louder at negative 12 decibels. Now, what that means is that the audio levels go up to they bounce around, so they're generally around negative 12 decibels. When someone laughs or goes, oh, or something like that, you want that to be not going in the red. As soon as it goes in the red, it's called peaking, and what it does is that sound wave hits the ceiling of as loud as it can go in the software or your recording levels or whatever, and it turns that beautiful wave into a flat top and bottom, and so it squashes all that data, so you don't get the definition of the data anymore. So it goes from sound wave into being kind of flat lining up the top and bottom. You can imagine a wave that has straight top and bottom, so you lose the definition. Okay, I've talked a lot. Hopefully some of you learnt some stuff, so let's go.
What do you think?
Good, nice natural hand reaction. Good balancing. She's using up about the same amount of screen as he did. So his head's there. Just put hers over to the right more. Really nice. Good, nice looking room. Great focus. Excellent. Really nice natural acting. Brilliant. So on to the next. They do say there's only 6 in this paper. So I can give more detailed feedback. And what I'd like to do is cover all the feedback that I would normally give in papers with more filmmakers tend to get more detailed feedback because there's more of them to make those mistakes. So I will give quite detailed feedback on these few films. So they do say don't film with children or animals, and the main reason is because it adds a much larger amount of possibilities of what could go wrong. You have less control over them. And so when you're filming, it's always best to make the environment as controlled as possible. It's where your OCD control freakishness can really come out in filmmaking, because the more control you have over the elements, the better. Within reason. When you are directing an actor, it's better to not direct them as puppets. It's better to not go rolling, oh no, move your arm, yep, and then tilt your head this way, okay, and now look sad, and then happy, okay, and because what that does is that gives almost a caricature of acting. So the better way to do it is to give them a reason for being on screen and a reason for doing what they're doing. Often when you're dealing with people that overact or don't know, kind of underact and feel all awkward and uncomfortable on screen, give them something to do. If it's folding, washing, or whatever. Don't have the washing basket in the shot, because then you'll see the lack of continuity between the basket being full and empty. But what you can do is have them mid shots and have them pulling out the washing and folding it and then putting it down. And so what that does is that gives them something to focus on. And then they're not focusing on acting or being in front of the camera. The other way you can help your actors a lot more is by giving them a backstory, or helping them, even better, helping them come up with a backstory themselves. So in this scene, you just got some tiny little bit of dialogue. As a director, just a straight technical director or whatever, you just try and get the best that you can out of your actors. As an actor-director, which is what, for me, gives a much better performance on screen, work with your actors to get a backstory out. So when they say, what do you think? Before you even start filming, say, hey, right, so let's sit down and go, what do you think you're asking? What do you think about? And you can give them a hat, or you can work with your actors and they could go, hey, what about if I say to them just before this scene, I want a divorce? And then they come back. They said, I want a divorce and I'll give you time to think about it. And then they come back into this scene and they go, what do you think? Because that gives that intonation, and it gives the character a lot more to work with. And then you get a lot of depth. When the audience watches what is going on screen, they might not know the backstory, but what they do see is a much better quality of content on screen. And that is what you want as a director. You want to have that audience as intrigued as possible in what you're talking about, or what the actors are talking about. Excuse me. So let's have a look. Oh, damn play button.
What do you think?
So stay on the establishing shot for longer, because the establishing shot allows the audience to get into the scene that you're showing them. So if you make the first shot too quick, it's jarring for the audience. They see it and then immediately they can't see it anymore. So stay on this shot for longer.
What do you think?
Now, great positioning with the camera down low behind him, looking up at the woman, and up behind her shoulder, looking down at him. Really nice left and right placement as well. Great use of the frame.
Well,
good. Now, when you had the camera at that angle on them, keep it at the same angle. For example, here, we're placed quite close to this boy and we see almost all of this woman's face. So we're not, the camera is not at an angle to her. We can we're almost straight on. So at that same angle on her, hopefully you're still with me, move the camera forward towards her rather than out in this direction. So when we come to here, you'll notice that the camera is at a much more, it's much more to the right of her. So do keep it on the same line that it was before. And an easy way of doing that is having your character, your actors still standing there and just moving that camera forward and then forward, and you shoot one person saying it, and then you move the camera over and you shoot the other person through the whole thing, and then run that scene a couple of times. Did I hear a "you're doing really well"? Great. Do give your actors as much positive support and encouragement as you possibly can, because that helps them want to work with you, and you want your actors to be as happy as possible and wanting to work with you, because you are going to need them a lot during this. And also in your filmmaking careers, you're going to need to have actors that want to work with you. So don't be one of those, throwing stuff down, having a paddy directors, because life's just not, it doesn't need to be that stressful. And when you encourage and support your actors and your crew and the people that pick up the rubbish and the cigarette butts, all of them, treat them really nicely. Give them food, give them drinks, whatever you can do. Give them drinks after, not before. Whatever you can do to help encourage them and praise them. And you can praise them and still give feedback. You can go, hey, that was great, because it is great. What is great is that they are giving up their time to work with you. So just say, hey, that was great. Hey, I'd love to try something different now. I'd like you to think about, for example, the divorce, but actually you really want them to say no. Or you really want them to say yes. So when they come back into the scene and they're like, what do you think? Is a lot different to, what do you think? Or what do you think? There's a number of different ways that they can say it. Now, what you want is to get the actor saying it in the way that you want them to say it. So figure out how you can. So saying what do you think to your cat about food, it's like, would you like some food? What do you think? Come on, have some food. Is completely different to saying something as gut busting as, I want a divorce, or I'd like to get together with you. What do you think? So I'm pretty sure I've hammered this point home. Give your actors reasons for saying it in the way that you want them to say it. And the more they can link that to their own real life scenario, the better. Now, when you do that, also allow for time to debrief afterwards, especially if you push them into places that aren't comfortable for them. You'll get good acting, but you do need to return that in kind by at the end going, whew, that was great, that was excellent, yay, alrighty, so let's go and sit down and have a coffee and let's talk about fun things, because whoa, that was excellent. And I feel like we could both do with some like lightening up now, because that was a real heavy scene. So praise, encouragement, support, you'll get what you can out of your actors. So on to the next one. Filmmaking is painting with light. So you want that light over your subjects, on your subjects. If you only have one light source coming from behind your subjects, I used to do this all the time. I'd be like, oh, let's shoot in front of the window. There's a beautiful scene outside the window. Now what that does is that puts a lot of stress on the camera, because you're trying to get the exposure correct for your actors' faces, and yet you're putting them with a really bright light behind. And those when someone stands in front of the hall light and your room's dark and you just see the silhouette, that's exactly what happens with the camera. And so if we place people in front of a really bright window like this and you want to film, either shine some really bright light onto them so that you can see them clearer, or place them in front of the window and use the window as a light source and get your camera on the other side so that the light from the window is shining on to their faces. Painting with light, put that light onto what you want to film and use that light to attract the audience to look at what you want them to see.
What do you think?
Okay, I've just turned that down because the audio is very loud and the background noise of the audio is very loud. How you get around that is by you move that mic a lot closer to who is speaking. Now, it's hard if your mic is attached in your camera. If it is, I'd really highly recommend getting an external mic. You don't have to pay that much, but what you can do then is get that microphone a lot closer to the people talking. Frame-wise, you will learn about audio a little bit later, but just that audio thing for now is a good thing to keep in mind. Framing wise, use up as much of the frame as you can, unless you're really trying to constrict the viewer. That kind of trying to constrict the viewer comes later on in filmmaking. Right now, what you're trying to do is just use up all the frame as much as possible. Have a look online for negative space and how to use negative space. If you look at, now that's not just filmmaking, that is just a simple art tool and skill to have. So if you look at drawing or painting or how to use colour in painting, all of that stuff can be applied to filmmaking, including composition. You can also move both of them over further and go from a medium shot to a closer shot to an extreme close-up of the eyes, because what that does is that pulls the audience member in closer into the intensity of the conversation. So we start off further away because often when you're in a conversation you don't go right up close at the start, but as things get more interesting you find people lean in towards the subject matter, and that is what you're doing with the camera, is you're going closer in because you're trying to just step closer into the conversation. So good focus, just rule of thirds. I would suggest focusing on the rule of thirds for your filming for a little while, and that will help you balance those shots up nicely. Looking room, that kind of stuff. So even though they say don't film with kids, the thing about kids is that they just are real characters. Often they don't care about being in front of the camera, or when they are in front of the camera they're like, yeah, I want you to see how cool I am, which is great to watch. This looks like they've been placed in front of a green screen, and the reason why in filmmaking they used a green screen was because green stands out very vividly differently, especially this kind of lime green colour stands out very vividly differently from skin tones and normal things that you film around, just the normal kind of colours. And so that means that you can actually cut the screen away, mask it out very easily without taking too much of people's faces and that kind of stuff, or tweaking with the levels very much. So what that's done is that's actually made putting them in front of this really bright green background has created the background to be more of interest than the kids themselves, because it is light, the light is shining on it, it is a bright, vivid colour, which makes, which makes the audience or the eye want to look at it. So if you put that light onto your actual fellas here, that will help them, that will help the eye of the audience look at them rather than look at the background. Now, this is lots of stuff that you haven't even learnt yet, but it is stuff that will help in your filmmaking. So let's go back to this.
What do you think?
So they both looked at each other, and that was really cute. Even just the way they interacted with each other with their eyes. Great, nice. Put him a little bit further over and give him something to talk about. He's got lollies. Do you want a lolly? And then the other dude doesn't say anything, and he's, what do you think? Or, hey, check out my new toy. What do you think? Or whatever.
One.
Nice. He's cracking up. Just check your focus on his eyes and his eyes as well. Do focus right on the eye, even if they're wearing glasses. Hey, and if they're going to crack up, let them crack up. They do, what do you think? Yeah, no. I come from Thai Happy, so that's actually how I speak in Thai Happy. It's really weird. I'm not trying to mock accents. It's just whenever I'm up there with my friends, that's how I start talking. And so they look great on screen, and there's a really nice kind of vibrance coming from them. So let them smile, let them laugh, let them enjoy themselves. And actually, what I would do was give them something ridiculous to ask that question about. So one of them comes in with a fake mo. He's like, what do you think? And the other one's just like, cracking up because it's ridiculous, but also it allows them to crack up in front of the camera. So what this looks like is someone in the scene and someone stepping into the scene. So nicely done. Let's see how this plays out. So we have the opening of the door. He comes into the scene. He puts an object down. That's great. So he's just placed something there that they can both talk about. And then that gives them a reason for their lines. Just get him further over to the right, get her further over to the left. Nice acting. Wow. Good. The background also suits the grey tones, suit really nicely as well. Good. So really subtle acting. Put her further over to the left, give her looking room. Nice. I saw you change the camera so that actually she fit much nicer. Great. So we don't know why he's talking about the pills, but we do know that they know. Now, as a director, you might not have said what you're talking about the pills, but as soon as you bring in that medication, they instantly bring in all their preconceived notions and ideas of pills. So she brings in hers, he brings in his, and so if you use a really good prop like that, you don't really need to give the actors much more. It's just really a tool to get out their history, knowledge, information, background of what they think. All comes into that little bottle of pills. Righty, last one here. Jump cut. So we go back. Now, why it was a jump cut was because the camera was at the same angle at approximately the same distance. Yes, it did go in a little bit towards them, but because the camera was at a same angle, the same height, pretty much the same camera positioning, just a little bit more forward, that felt like a jump cut. Now, for this paper, in fact, for just about, I think, all your papers for the Diploma of Digital Filmmaking, don't have jump cuts. There's a lot more jump cuts now in television, but you need to know these rules before you break the rules. So avoid jump cuts, and then you can find out where jump cuts work. And usually they increase tension and compress time, and for now, leave them out.
1, 2, 10.
Put him further over and her further over. That's a good mid shot.
Well,
That's that's a nicer shot to start with. So you go in from there and into the closer. Good. Again, put him and her further over and just go with the rule of thirds with your framing. Great. Now, my only comment, and I love the way he goes out and shuts the door. Nice. If you had have given them something to talk about, it just would have removed the kind of roboticness from them. And the reason why actors go, I've got a degree in acting, so that's part of the reason why I focus on acting. It's because the reason why actors don't give a good performance is because they don't really know why they are there, except for you filming them. So again, if you give them something to talk about, if you give them something to do that helps them focus on those two things, and there's a lot less focus placed on the fact that you have a big camera shoved in their face. Alrighty, I hope there was lots of learning there, not an overload, but enough to make you go, yeah, excellent, I'm going to apply that into my future learning and filmmaking.